Good morning. We will now commence the meeting for the Douglas County Board of Commissioners. This is Tuesday, July 9th, 2024. Copy of Open Meetings Act is located on the north wall of the Legislative Chamber. Also, an automatic external defibrillator is also available on the back wall. Please stand for the pledge. We'll first commence with the Board of Equalization. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Borgeson. Commissioner Boyle. Commissioner Kavanaugh. Commissioner Friend. Commissioner Morgan. Commissioner Rogers is absent, and Mr. Chair.
Here. First item of business are items A and B. A being the approval of the minutes of the Board of Equalization meeting held Tuesday, June 25th, 2024, and B, a call for a meeting and set Tuesday, July 23rd, 2024, as date for hearing on certified assessment corrections reflecting the addition of omitted property to the tax rolls or increased value on property. Do I have a motion and a second?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Morgan, second by Friend. Please vote.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. Next, we have our resolutions, C through F. We could potentially take them in a block. Is there anybody here to discuss any of these resolutions, just for my information, specifically? All right, let me take them in a block then, and we'll get Larry's commentary. Do we have a motion and a second for the resolutions?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Morgan, second by a Friend. Larry?
Larry Storr, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha 68132. On Resolution C, as I got to reading through the documents on this last night, I thought, you know, it's a shame that we're even wasting our time on this today because it's supposedly going to be denied, which I would agree to. However, I think it's such a ridiculous application that it should not be taking up our time here today anyway. I have had many requests in for a presentation that have been denied, but this gets time at the podium, and I don't. Other citizens that believe like I do don't. So I really think this should have been scrapped to start with, and it's just another example of where the citizens don't have any control of their government anymore, and it's time to stop that. The Declaration of Independence obviously applies to county and local governments, state, local, as well as state governments, not just the federal government. So this is sort of an opening shot by citizens and we the people who had a meeting last night to discuss that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Larry. Anybody else on resolution C through F for Board of Equalization? If not, we'll vote. Oh, I can. Motion to seconder, okay? Yeah. Okay, good. All right, plus adjournment.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. We'll move on to our Board of Commissioners agenda. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Borgeson. Commissioner Boyle. Commissioner Kavanaugh. Commissioner Friend. Commissioner Morgan. Commissioner Rogers is absent, and Mr. Chair.
Here. First item of business is section 1, specifically A and B. A being the approval of minutes of the Board of Commissioners meeting held Tuesday, June 25th, 2024. B, the approval of claims submitted for payment process through Tuesday, July 16th, 2024. Do I have a motion and a second?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Morgan, second by Friend. Please vote.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. Next, we have our consent agenda, items A through R. Do I have a motion and a second for discussion?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Morgan, second by Friend. Is there any commentary on the consent agenda items? Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Couple questions for the record on item G, detention center agreement between administrative offices of the courts and probation and Douglas County Youth Center for detention services. I've reviewed this document, and we've talked about this in the past relative to compensation for children that are held pursuant to the probation office's actions, and compensation to Douglas County for those. The per diem cost, I think, is what we're talking about here. Is that correct?
This is the amount that state probation.
Kim, can you identify yourself,
Oh,
please?
sorry, Kim Havakati, Deputy County Administrator. Commissioner, the per diem cost for detention is $400 per day. State probation is paying us $341 per day.
Currently, or does this agreement step it up to that amount?
The current amount that ended June 30th of 2024 was $334 per day. They upped it to $341 per day.
Okay, but the actual cost of holding a child for a day at the Douglas County Youth Center is $400?
That's correct.
Okay. And the term of this agreement?
The term is for 1 year, until June 30th of 2025.
Thank you. I have a question on item I. Wexford Health Sources, Inc., to provide comprehensive inmate health and mental health services in the amount of approximately $11,538,073.12 per year, based on average daily population of 1,100 inmates. Is there anybody that can address this? Director Myers, thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Michael Myers, Director of Corrections.
Thanks, Mike. We have, for the last number of years, outsourced these services. And has Wexford been the vendor prior to this?
No, WellPath has been our vendor, and we made the determination that it was time to make a change.
Okay, so this is for $11.5+ million per year?
That's correct. There may be some opportunities to go with a different model that may reduce that price down to about $11 million.
And again, the term of the agreement is?
We typically do these a 3-year agreement up front, but we would have an out clause if we needed to.
I bring this up because we've had discussions about why are we outsourcing something for $11.5 million when we could certainly handle it, and have in the past internally, probably for a lot less. But I'm just bringing that up because it's on the consent agenda. It's an enormous amount to be on the consent agenda. So I just want people to be aware that that's what we're doing, and this will pass today. Thank you. There is a
20 seconds.
couple of grants on here. Okay. And Ms. Havakati, I think these are on yours as well. O and P, these are, one is an approval of an 8-month contract for the administration of the 2020-2021 OJJDP Title II funds to community providers in the amount of $35,647. These are for youth services?
That's time. Commissioner, we're going to loop back around to you in just a second
fine,
here.
thank you. Okay.
We'll get to that. Commissioner Borgeson?
I just wanted to request that item B be voted on separately, please.
All right.
And then my comments to that is I am totally against them not paying our cost, especially when the state is hammering on us about our spending, and we are doing nothing but subsidizing their responsibilities, because probation is is underneath the Nebraska Supreme Court's jurisdiction, not ours. And just for record purposes, we have a time to release data for June. And kids that have been in our youth center charged as adults have been sitting there for 166 days. Predisposition youth have been sitting there for 40, and probation youth have been sitting there for 61, with 15 of those having release orders that have not been released. And so when we have people knocking at us about the number of kids we have in our youth center, this is a problem, especially when they're sitting there and not moving through the system as they're supposed to be moving. And again, on the county's, it affects our budget as well. So I'm pretty upset about this because, again, it is our cost. The state has, again, hammered on us for the last year about our spending. And this is just one of many examples of what county government has to subsidize state services for. So I'm not real happy about the agreement. Doesn't have to do with anybody who negotiated it. Again, it's the state failing to do their part in paying for their responsibilities. Thank you.
Commissioner, you wanted G separately? Okay, got it, thank you. And without objection, we'll do that. We'll loop back around to Commissioner Kavanaugh to finish his commentary.
Yes, thank you. The items that I was inquiring about are O and P. Both of these appear to be grants. O is approval of an 8-month contract for the administration of 2020-2021 OJJDP Title II funds to community providers. Urban League, Nebraska, $34,647, grant funded, budgeted. And Ms. Havakati, we were just about to discuss that. What's the source of the grant?
Kim Havakati, Deputy County Administrator. The source of the grant is a federal grant to combat racial and ethnic disparities, and these funds go to community-based providers in the targeted areas of our community to do community-based services. Now, this one in particular, Commissioner, was awarded by the board to the Goal Center, but the Goal Center is no longer in existence and has been taken over by the Urban League, so this money is being transferred over to the Urban League to finish out the terms of the Goals contract.
And what's the term?
The end of December of 2024.
And P, approval of agreement for grant-funded stability services for the use by the home program as an alternative to detention. Netter Enterprises LLC for day and evening reporting services and in-home family support. It doesn't have a grant amount, it says grant funds.
Kim Havakati, Deputy County Administrator. That also is a 2022 OJJDP Title II grant that we use to pay for our stability services with the home program.
Do we know the approximate amount of that?
This is a fee-for-service basis, so it's so much per day when we use the service, and if we don't use the service, Commissioner, we do not pay.
So there's like a per diem cost for these services?
It's a per diem cost, correct.
Do we know what that is?
It was in the contract. I believe day and evening reporting is $169 per day.
Neither of these are from Douglas County funds. They're from federal funds.
They're 100% federal grant funds.
Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anything else on the consent agenda? Commissioner Boyle.
Yeah. So thank you. I just wanted to piggyback on what Commissioner Borgeson was saying. I think it's important for Douglas County taxpayers to know that we are Douglas County taxpayers are subsidizing the costs of keeping kids at the youth center. So this is the responsibility of the state probation office, and they're not paying us what it takes to just keep a child there safely per day. So Douglas County taxpayers should be quite upset about the fact that you are subsidizing something that is the responsibility of the state. So we do pay, we do get the $341. That's what the per day, that's what this contract is going to say. But the costs are more than that. So I just want to make it clear that this is another episode where this plus other mandated unfunded issues, the state really puts a chokehold on the county's ability to balance the budget. So when property tax folks come to us and do rightfully complain about high property taxes, it's of course justified, but again, that comes from the state. The state's the one that puts limits on that. So, but I just want to point out that this contract is not something we're excited about. At the same time, it's kind of like when in the field of medicine, when I'm getting paid by an insurance company, I'll say, okay, my costs are $1,000, and they'll say, okay, we'll pay you $200. It's like, okay, well, how about if we do $900? Okay, we'll pay you $200. So that's kind of what this feels like too. So we're under we're forced to just take what the state will pay. And again, Douglas County taxpayers are funding the rest of it when it's a state responsibility.
Thank you, Commissioner. I know our clerk would like to make a few comments on the consent agenda.
No. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dan Ash, Douglas County Clerk. On item O, it asks for the previous chair to sign, so we were just going to change it to Chair Garcia, the agreement. So I just wanted to note that. And I believe, I think on items N and O, at one point, the links were broken, like for people to attach or see the attachments. Obviously, the commissioners have the correct documentation in their binders, but it may be if someone at one point went out to look for those, they may not have been able to get to them, but those links have been fixed, or at least one of them has for sure. The other one, I guess I didn't check, but they're going to get fixed if they're not fixed. So, and I do have one on item G, but I'll wait until we vote on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Anything else on the consent agenda minus G? We're going to take G separately. Larry? Please let us know which item. Larry.
Which one are you on right now?
The full consent agenda. So which one
Okay.
specifically would you like to talk
Yeah.
about?
I want to comment on, I think, at least 3 of them. G, O, and P, probably also I.
Okay, we're going to take G separately, so go ahead and
Yeah.
comment on the other ones.
This is all part of what seems like to average citizen, quite like the property tax, where you put the blame on the school districts for their levies raising my property taxes. And here we are now blaming the state for not providing the money for all these you call unfunded services. Maybe you should take the note from that it maybe should services that should not be provided at all by this body. Yes, grant money, which involves federal dollars that takes over our government, but there is no real explanation on certain things for us who cannot understand your documents on the computer sites, that all of these community centers for mental health and health get tax dollars, support from this body. How many are there? And why do we have this much more money going to mental health illness again for maybe the county jails or the city, the youth, when there are all of these places already getting dollars for providing help? It seems like there could be some budget cuts here or some more explanation of those items. Detention center agreement. Again, how many of the citizens are actually approving these programs? Did they get to vote on them? Probably not. So maybe it shouldn't be done. Maybe it's not working. We have a mental health crisis we hear every week. Why? Why is it not working? Who is it not working for? And oh my gosh, another $11 million? Why? Don't throw money down a rat hole. Stability services, grant funded, but yes, it comes out of tax dollars somewhere, doesn't it? And when that goes away, are you going to be able to blame the state for not providing the money for that? How are you going to get it? You know what? You'll be getting it from me, and you'll be driving me over to Iowa. Probably already have. So it's time for you to cut back on unnecessary programs that don't work and stop spending money you don't have. Stop asking the federal government for it.
Thank you. Anything else on consent agenda? If not, we'll vote on items, all items minus G.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. We'll now take up item G, detention center agreement between probation and DCYC. Commentary on that one? If not, we'll vote on it. Please vote.
Do
Oh,
we need it?
Mr. Clerk?
May I get a?
Oh, yeah, motion and second first.
Make the motion to approve it.
Motion by Morgan,
Second.
second by Friend. All right,
Okay.
now,
And then before we vote, just wanted to note there's a misspelling we're going to correct on the resolution. The dollar amount, the numerical is listed correctly, but the spelling had a typo that we're going to correct after you all approve it. Or-
Okay.
All right.
thank you. Please vote.
Motion passes 5-1. Commissioner Borgeson voting no, all other commissioners voting yes.
Thank you. That completes our consent agenda. We'll now move on to section 3, recognition and proclamation. We do have one item, item A, a resolution recognizing Paul Johnson for over 17 years as the Douglas County Emergency Management Agency Director and congratulating him on his retirement. So with that, we do have a resolution to consider. It's been tossed around for signatures. Have we completed the signatures? Looks like we have. We'll bring up Mr. Johnson and family.
Move for approval.
Motion by Morgan for approval. Second by Friend. And
Thank you.
Paul, go ahead and say a few words if you like.
Paul Johnson, Director of the Douglas County Emergency Management Agency for the last day. And this is my wife, Deb. And just want to thank this board and thank all our community partners that have supported me and the agency throughout the years. And what a drastic change we have made in the last 17 and a half years from where emergency management was then till now has just been rapid through the federal government and the state all the way down to us. So it's been an exciting career, and it's been a lot of change, and it's been a lot of appreciation that we have for our administration here and your decision-making here on this body, and I want to thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Paul. We know that not only did you dedicate 17 years of service to the citizens here in Douglas County, but even in this year, in your final few months, you had some big events to address and support our community with in regards to the tornado response, and you did a fantastic job working with our partners to do that. So thank you so much for your dedicated service. So congratulations on your retirement.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Well, yes, we'll first jump to commentary. Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Thank you. I just wanted to echo some of Chairman Garcia's sentiments regarding the most recent tornado, which was miraculously fatality-free. And I think a large part of that credit goes to you and your folks for getting the warning out there countywide. And your response to the damage that our community sustained from that has been first class. I remember when the flood of 2019 occurred and the great job that you did there as well when virtually the entire western portion of the county was underwater at some time. And I think there again, there was no loss of life despite the enormous damage that was done to our community. This is because of you and your great service to us as a community and as a county. And I want to say we really appreciate it. And we wish you the very best in your retirement. You've earned it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll jump to Commissioner Morgan.
Well, I too want to thank you and your wife, your 3 daughters, 7 grandchildren who I met yesterday. That was great to have them all there, and we really appreciate your services. And I know your wife mentioned how you'd get those 7 calls during the night and so on with the phone ringing. And your 17 years, and I think I'm correct on that, has meant really a lot of great service to us and to the citizens. So thank you, and I wish you the best.
Thank you.
And enjoy your retirement. If you decide to come back, call us, please.
Well, I want to thank my staff. You know, they've been critical, and Kathy Allen at that 911 center, and it's just been amazing. But been a lot of, you know, the results of these disasters and community emergencies aren't just during workday hours, that's for sure. And so they're through the night and through the weekends and Christmas Day and everything else. So the staff, I just want to emphasize, works a lot behind the scenes on that, and so I want to thank them as well.
And I'll add to that what I just said with Kathy Allen. She's another one of our real jewels, like yourself. And we have so many people that do such outstanding things. I see Amber sitting way in the back from our correction facility. We're just so fortunate to have the great people and staff.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll jump to Commissioner Borgeson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Paul, for your service. And I too remember the flood and now the tornado. A lot in my district was affected by that. You know, 911 I've always looked at as really the ultimate first responders, but I look at you as the silent responder and the silent hero of what you organize behind the scenes without any fanfare, without any big splashes of, you know, posts all over the place about what you've done, but you've done it. And it has definitely not gone unnoticed by this board, and we appreciate your leadership. And I just wish you both the best and happiness in your retirement, and go enjoy those grandbabies and kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Commissioner Friend.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Real quick, I've really only known Paul about 4 years, but the funny thing is I've gotten to know him obviously because of the recent disasters that we've incurred in Western Douglas County and stuff. And Paul's a very process-oriented guy, almost an engineer, you know, but an extroverted one. So he's the kind of engineer that looks at your shoes as opposed to his own when he's talking to you. The other thing, that was a joke, by the way. What the hell? I guess I'm losing it. Funny thing about Paul is everybody knows I've got a bunch of millennial children. They're adults now, but when they want me, they text me. They don't call, they text. The interesting thing about Paul is he'll text and go, "Hey, do you have time for a conversation whenever you want?" And I'm like, I never told him this, but I'm like, "Paul, just call me. If I can't answer, I'll, you know." And by the way, if Paul calls me, I probably will answer. So the head of emergency management, yeah. Paul, the process-oriented nature in which you approach your business, I can't thank you enough. I mean, it made my job a heck of a lot easier, and all of our jobs a heck of a lot easier. So thanks for the work that you've done. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right. Congrats again, Paul. I think we'll take a quick picture with the board here.
Thank you.
Commissioner Garcia.
Yes, go for it.
Just as the county administrator, I just want to thank you for all of your years. What I love about department directors like you is that I don't have to look over your shoulder. I can, you put the right people in the right place and you get out of the way. And with you, that is the way we've been able to do that. You've done a great job without having to have somebody look over your shoulder. You're self-directed. I will say that you and Mike Myers and Kathy Allen and Rondi are the 4 people I do not want to get phone calls from, because I know it's not going to be good. But I also know that whatever it is, that you're on top of it and you handled it well. So thank you again for your service.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you. We'll take that picture and then we'll vote. Oh, let's take the pic quick. I'll read it and we'll take the vote. What's the pic?
Where does he want us? Oh.
Good to see you again. Yeah, you got yeah.
All right, thank
Oh, sure. So we know what we're voting into the record here. Paul, we'll go ahead and read the resolution, then we'll vote on it. It says, whereas Mr. Paul Johnson, originally from Cedar Falls, Iowa, began his employment with Douglas County on November 13, 2006, and has served as the director of Douglas County Emergency Management Agency with dedication and distinction for nearly 18 years. And whereas Mr. Johnson moved to Omaha from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, for a job at HCR Engineering. He also owned his own consulting firm before joining Douglas County. And whereas his passion for emergency management stemmed from his desire to have a positive impact during community emergencies and natural disasters. And whereas during his tenure at Douglas County, Mr. Johnson addressed the planning, responding, and recovery issues associated with 19 community emergencies and natural disasters. And he played a pivotal role in updating the Emergency Operations Center from the Cold War civil defense model to the post 9/11 emergency management model. And whereas Mr. Johnson's career was marked by significant challenges, including the 2011 flood along the Missouri River, where he managed the situation while maintaining normal city and Eppley airfield operations during the College World Series, and the 2019 flood along the Elkhorn and Platte Rivers, where his quick thinking and leadership ensured the safety of displaced residents who had to be airlifted to safety by National Guard helicopters. And whereas Mr. Johnson's career was fulfilling due to the many changes in emergency management and the many people he had the privilege to work with, earning him the admiration and respect of his coworkers and colleagues for his leadership and ability to work well with others. And whereas Mr. Johnson said he looks forward to spending more time with family and friends and enjoying traveling during his retirement. Now therefore be it resolved by this Board of Commissioners, Douglas County, Nebraska, that this board hereby recognizes Paul Johnson for his over 17 years as the Douglas County Emergency Management Agency Director and congratulates him on his retirement. So with that being said, we'll vote. Congrats.
Motion passes 6-0.
We will now move to our committee action and discussion items, which is section 6 of our agenda. In section A, finance, we have budget report as presented, and item 2, monthly fee report from the Douglas County Clerk Comptroller, also as presented. We also will look at human resources, item G, weekly personnel report from civil service as presented as well. We do have an upcoming separate budget meeting immediately following Board of Commissioners. The way we can do it is that we do have a need for executive session, but we don't want to have the public have to wait for us. So we could resource Board of Commissioners, go into the budget meeting, complete that, then come back and take care of executive session is what I think we can do. Oh, and I missed an item, which we'll get back to in a second. But that could be our plan for executive session so that the public doesn't have to wait for the budget meeting. With that being said, I clearly missed an item under Community Services. My apologies. We'll jump back to D1, reallocation of 2023-24 Visitor Improvement Fund Grant Award for Coneco. Commissioner Kavanaugh or Catherine, did you have a comment on this item?
Just real quick, this is a routine transfer of 1 year's allocation to the subsequent year because of some programmatic delays on the program coming in during the grant year that it was set for. Catherine, I don't know if you've got anything to add to that.
Catherine Hall, County Administration. That's a good summary. This group received a Visitor Improvement Fund award in the last cycle for a specific exhibition, and due to some administrative restructuring at the organization, it delayed the timeline for the original exhibition. So they're requesting to reallocate their award for another exhibition that falls within the original award period and meets those guidelines.
Thank you. So, motion by Borgeson to approve, second by Boyle. So we're not necessarily changing funds from agency to agency. It's within the same awarded agency.
Correct.
Just updating what they're going to utilize the funds for. Very good. All right. So with that being said, we do have a motion and a second. Any extra commentary? If not, we can vote.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. That completes everything except for executive session, which we'll get back to after a recess, which will allow us to do the budget meeting. So do we have a motion and a second for recess? Motion by Morgan, second by Commissioner Boyle. And we'll vote on that.
Give me one moment, please.
Did you have a comment, Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Just a reminder to people that there will be a Community Services Committee hearing at 1:30 and 9:03 regarding the Visitor Improvement Fund grant awards for the 24-25 calendar year and the Visitor Improvement Fund grant policy considerations. Thank you.
Thank you. While we're pulling things up, I'll also mention that we do not have a meeting next week. We will return on, I believe, July 23rd. Yes, that's correct. All right, so we do have a motion and a second for recess. The PowerPoint is up for the next meeting, but first we have to vote on the recess.
Okay, thank you, commissioners. Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. We're now officially recessed from Board of Commissioners. We're going to jump into the budget meeting for Board of Commissioners Tuesday, July 9th, 2024. As mentioned, we still have a copy of Open Meetings Act in the north wall. With that being said, we do have a public hearing on the 2024-2025 Douglas County budget. We will have a presentation first by Finance Director Lori Persh, and then we'll take comments and questions. Lori?
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners.
Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. I missed the roll call for this separate
go
meeting.
Commissioner Borgeson, Commissioner Boyle, Commissioner Kavanaugh, Commissioner Friend, Commissioner Morgan, Commissioner Rogers is absent, and Mr. Chair.
Here. All right. Lori?
Okay. Good morning, Commissioners. Lori Persh, Director of Budget and Finance for Douglas County. I am here today to present the budget for fiscal year 24-25. It is $607.7 million, including ARPA funds, or $563 million, excluding ARPA funds. In your board books is the full budget deck. I have, you should have received a little bit smaller deck that I'm going to walk you through right now. That way we can do this in, 15 minutes instead of an hour, right? So we'll start with, by looking at the tax levy. Over the last 10 years, there's just been 1.5 penny increase, and that was in fiscal year 19-20 for the Juvenile Justice Center. We have also had one decrease, as this group of commissioners voted to decrease the levy by a half-cent this past year. The column on the right is in blue as the final, as it's tentative, and the final levy will be set in September. So when talking about the tax levy, it's useful to take a look at how the county, what portion the county represents of a taxpayer's total tax bill. So for this typical, Douglas County resident, the Douglas County taxes account for only about 13% of that property taxpayer's bill. 21% is the city of Omaha, and 55% is the school districts. So the upshot is that it's really not so much the county funding that's primarily driving the high property taxes, but rather support for schools. We do know that Governor Pillen is, of course, looking for a 40% reduction in property taxes, and calling for a special session of the unicameral that will be starting on July 25th. And the reason for that is to fix what he's calling Nebraska's property tax crisis. Obviously, we would all like to see some property tax relief. But as administrators of the county, we also need to make sure that we can provide the services that we need to provide to the citizens, 911 and sheriff and all of the things that we do. So we will be watching to see what legislation may come out of this session and its impact on our budget. So by statute, we have to have a separate special budget hearing, which is what we are doing right now. And I'll kind of go through a couple of bullet points summarizing this proposed budget. The budget assumes no increase in the tax levy on assessed property values. The budget assumes a 6% increase in total county assessed property values net of Board of Equalization protests. So in talking with the assessor, I think the thought is that would be a little bit higher, but again, we have to always haircut that due to the fact that we have the protests with the Board of Equalization. So the total budget, as I mentioned, is $607.7 million. 44.3 million of that represents our remaining ARPA award. So net of that amount, our total budget is $563.4 million, which is 12.2% above last year's final modified budget. That is driven largely by increased costs for healthcare operations and a $28.7 million increase in road project spending, which, just as a reminder, those road projects are reimbursed by highway allocation funds. I think that budget went from $49 million last year to $77.7 million. But again, those are not property tax dollars driving that portion of the budget. So the next bullet point is our general fund, which is, of course, property tax dollars, right? That's the largest portion. And that budget is $322.6 million. If you exclude the $44.3 million of ARPA funding, which again is just kind of that one-time award, from a few years ago, then we are down to $278.3 million, which is only 3.6% above last year's final modified budget. And by final modified budget, I mean the approved budget and then including the two supplements, the one that we granted in March and the one that was granted in May. So it's only 3.6% above that. Again, the increase were primarily related to the costs of providing inmate medical care, costs to implement a new ERP system to replace our current Oracle EBS, which was installed 21 years ago, increases in criminal justice costs, and increase in facility operating costs from the Public Building Commission. So also, I think it is worth pointing out that 3.6% is above the 3% that we would like to see, but according to the U.S. Joint Economic Committee website, the core CPI inflation in Nebraska for the 12 months prior to July 2024 was 5.7%. So all in all, I don't think that the 3.6% is, terribly unreasonable or out of line, all things considered. The hearing regarding the final tax rate will occur in September after the final valuation is certified by the assessor on August 20th. So the budget parameters, I'm going to talk a little bit about the general fund and kind of the expense side and then the revenue side. The parameters for 24-25, as set in our budget call letter, were a 3% increase for salaries and a 1.5% increase for all other expenses. And that's how we set the budget targets. Of course, the departments actually only get half of that salary increase because we budget that for the first 6 months, and then at the end of December, the board here gets to decide what they're going to do for salary increases for the next calendar year, which of course encompasses the salary increase for the last 6 months of the fiscal year, and we use the salary adjustment fund to accommodate that. So there were 7 departments that were not able to, whose budget requests came in over target. Those departments are listed here. The sheriff, the county attorney, public defender, corrections, emergencymanagement.com, and GIS, in total about $8.3 million for their requests above target. And you'll note that 4 of the 7 are part of the criminal justice system, and we have talked in prior years, and I know that the legislature, when they were in session, they talked about this as well, that criminal justice costs, not just in Douglas County, not just in Nebraska, but just kind of across the board have been increasing, at a higher rate than general inflation and whatnot. So not terribly surprising to see some of those departments coming in requesting some more budget dollars. Of course, the big one that jumps off the page is the $5.75 million for corrections. $4 million of that is related to the increase in inmate medical care. And I assure you that I know Director Myers and his team, and along with some of the commissioners, have been working to try to figure out ways to see if we can minimize that additional expense, whether that be insourcing or working with the outsourced providers. So there is focus on that. I do realize that one looks like a pretty big number. So a couple of the revenue drivers, largely the revenues are similar year over year with some slight increases. We do have a couple of drivers that are the assumed 6% increase in assessed property valuations will bring in an additional $10.7 million in revenue. And then interest income due to the sustained higher interest rates, $2.7 million. So in total, about $13.4 million with those 2 items. Again, that interest income isn't anywhere near what we had seen through this last fiscal year, because while we're anticipating that rates will stay high for a portion of the fiscal year, we're not anticipating they will stay that high for the entire fiscal year. In fact, in total, year-to-date revenues from the treasurer as of 6/28/24, so basically for the fiscal year that was just ended, were $36.7 million. We have only included $31.9 million in revenues from the treasurers for FY 24-25. So there is a significant decrease there that we have accounted for, about $4.8 million. Nonetheless, I did want to point out that our revenues are enough to cover our expenses, inclusive of the requested budget overages for those departments that came in over target, those departments on the previous page, these departments. It is razor thin. We are break even, but there is no surplus. There's no deficit. It is razor thin. We are balanced. The end. No extra. All right. The next slide here shows the source of revenues that support our operations. So I'm going to use the analogy that I used last year that I stole from my predecessor, Joe, but most governments are a 3-legged stool. They have property taxes, income taxes, and sales tax. As you all know, Douglas County solely relies on property tax to support their operations, their general fund operations. So that's the property taxes, as you can see from this pie chart, are just shy of 50% of our total operational revenue. The only other revenue line item that is double digits in terms of being a percentage of revenue is the departmental revenue, which represents about 22% of operating revenues. So roughly 70% of revenue is covered by those 2 items in covering our operations. We do also have another tax stream, and that is inheritance tax, but those dollars are not used to support general fund operations. Those inheritance tax receipts can be unreliable as they can fluctuate year to year, and they're also always continually on the chopping block down in the unicameral. So we don't want to make that be one of our primary operating sources of revenue. So the next slide here goes through our transfers. So transfers for this fiscal year that just ended were $18 million, slated to be about $25 million for next year. That is a $7.1 million increase. But if you back out the transfer from the inheritance tax fund balance of 4.2 million, we moved that over to set some funds aside to pay for our new ERP system. Like I said earlier, I think I mentioned we've been on the Oracle EBS on-prem system for 21 years, and it's time for an upgrade. So not the cheapest project to undertake, so we wanted to make sure that we had set some funds aside because we had not previously encumbered funds for that. So that explains that jump. And then you can see, inheritance tax is an important part of our budget. It is used to help fund social services such as the Douglas County Health Center and CMHC. Again, I mentioned this and probably beating this to death, but it is not used for general fund operations. Those are supported by property tax alone. But you can see even just 4 years ago in 2020, our receipts were only 11 million. 2023, so not this year that just ended, but the prior year was our record of 26.5 million. As of 6/21, we were 21 million roughly. I think when I looked at the report from 6/28, I think we're at like 22.1 million in revenue. So you can see the fund balance as of 6/30 was 36.9 million, and then we anticipate collecting. We've got in the budget anticipated collections of 18 million in inheritance tax this year, and then the disbursements of 22.2 million, which if you look up above, there's the 18 million plus the 4.2 for the ERP system. So that would really leave us with a remaining fund balance at the end of this next fiscal year of 32.7 million. And this last slide shows the change in taxable valuations over the past 20 years. You can see that valuations have more than doubled. Obviously, there was a very large increase last year of 12.2%. I think that was the highest in the last 20 years. We obviously do not anticipate valuations will continue to increase at such rates, especially on the commercial side. So given that we don't anticipate valuations to be growing at those same levels as we've seen in recent years, and due to this governor and his focus on the property tax reduction, we do anticipate that budgets will be tighter in future years. So with that, I'll take any questions or comments.
Thank you, Lori. We will jump to commentary and questions, starting with Commissioner Kavanaugh.
Thank you, and thanks for this. Reading through here, it appears that minus the federal COVID relief ARPA funds and minus, I think they're largely federal highway funds, federal and state funds, we have a budget increase year over year of 3.6%, is that right?
In the operating funds and the general fund.
Okay. And I think you've looked into it, maybe you mentioned it, I didn't catch it if you did. The annual inflation for the last year has run about what?
5.7% in Nebraska for the 12 months prior to this month, prior to July of 2024.
Okay, so the 3.6% overall budget increase is substantially lower than what the national
Our
inflation
departments
has
have
been.
done a good job of, for the most part, staying within the targets that we set.
I appreciate that. I'm looking through here, and it's probably in some other documents for expenditures, but I do notice a couple of things here that I wanted to make sure that we were right about. The income that we receive in addition to the COVID relief funds and the ARPA funds from the federal government include funding for health care. I think it's primarily probably Medicare and Medicaid funding. But the expenditure that we have for those same departments is largely offset by those funds. And I have it here someplace.
Yes, largely offset. I think, not entirely, but largely. So I think the For the Douglas County Health Center, their total budget expenditures for this coming year are $46.5 million. Their budgeted incoming revenues from things like you mentioned, Medicare, Medicaid, and whatnot, $35.9 million. So there's, say $10.5 million that will need to be funded by the county.
So the Douglas County Health Center, we're budgeting for 46.5 million. 35.9 million, almost 36 million of that is offset by federal funding.
Right.
So 80%, whatever. The Community Mental Health Center, we're budgeting for 22.3 million. 10.7 million of that, the same federal monies, so 50% roughly. And the Health Department, 22.9 million, and revenues from that department outside of Douglas County revenues is 18 million. So again, substantially, those three big health related costs are offset. I don't see, and I'm sure that it's in the backup document someplace, for the same number that we are currently budgeting for, say, the Correction Center. And I know you mentioned criminal justice is one of the big drivers of increase. But what is that all-in Correction Center?
The corrections budget for this year is $63.75 million. 63,750,000.
53 point, I'm sorry?
63.
63?
63,750,000.
Okay.
Versus the prior year budget of 56,290,000. So that is the one that we did see have the big increase, and like I said, that was mostly, primarily due to the inmate medical expense.
Okay. So along the same, apples to apples thing, where we had the budget amount and the offset amount for the health services, we have the budget amount of 63.7 million. Is there a significant offset on that from federal or state funding?
I don't think that there's a significant offset for that one. That is largely
So it's gonna
property
be
tax
time.
supported.
Oh, we'll come back. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Friend?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if it's necessarily pertinent at this point. Maybe we need a motion in a second, but there's been a lot of dialogue today already about how we interact with the state, not just from the public, but commissioners have weighed in on this issue, and it is an issue. The state, what Lori inherited when she got this job is to look out at the landscape and realize that, and I've said this before, but I've said it in a different way, when the state operates in its appropriation function, there's a significant portion of appropriation authority that's granted to the Appropriations Committee, for example, by state statute, along with executive veto of power. So the Appropriations Committee can come in and say, we're going to give these particular departments, all of these departments, X amount, and we have the authority to actually do that. The interesting part about the county, and it's a dichotomy, the interesting part about the county is a significant portion of the appropriation capability is directed by the state. We've outlined that. Some of the commissioners have outlined that earlier. Funny part about it is what Lori inherited, and Joe knew a long time ago, is you start with statutorily directed services. We have 111 services, give or take a few in any given year, services and departments that the county funds, 111 of them. Statutorily directed, that means there's a statute out there that says the county, you're gonna deal with this. 73 services of those 111. Mandated by the state. So there's a statute behind it that says you don't have any choice. You're going to do it. If you violate it, we will sue you. There's nothing you can do about it. 64 services or departments, no option. you will do it. Non-mandated. State does not speak to it. They don't speak to it statutorily. They don't speak to it in any other fashion. Non-mandated services or departments, 27. Remember, we have 111 services and departments. We only have 27 that are not mandated. Federal and state reimbursement. Commissioner Kavanaugh made a good point on this. Federal and state reimbursement for services and departments. Mostly partially or significantly funded, hardly ever 100%. You know how many? 14. So from the state or the feds, we get reimbursed by 14, to the tune of 14 departments, and we have 111. You see where this is going? Fee-based subsidy. We do get fees. Treasurer's office collects fees. Other entities collect fees. 29 services that we provide are collecting a portion of fees. Certainly not 100% to actually run their departments. And then 9 of them, only 9, receive grant funding. Every week we're lamenting about grants that fly through here that we're trying to promote. I'm almost out of time. I can go forever, but I'll circle back around. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Friend. I'll take a quick round myself. If you focus in on the slides we're looking at and the departments that are over, and as our finance director Persh mentioned, 4 out of 7 are directly related to our criminal justice system. You add on top of that emergency management as well as another department, and when individuals say, well, just go cut things, and lower your budget. It's like, okay, if you look at what actually takes up the majority of our budget, it's like, what do you want us to cut? Do you want us to cut sheriff's deputies? Do you want us to cut corrections officers, make our jail less safe? Do you want us to cut, county attorneys and public defenders to increase their caseloads and slow down the cases in the criminal justice system? We want to make sure that our courts are safe. We want to make sure the courts are functioning with expediency and proficiency. And so there's so many things that are related to criminal justice, to public safety, law enforcement, all things that we want to support, all things that take up large pieces of our budget. So that's exactly what we do at the ground level, practical level, with our budget. So if you look through these specifics, I wouldn't say that they're items of fat that could be made leaner, as some use that metaphor. They're items that really serve the public in many crucial, important ways. And so if we are going to look at placing limitations on our budget from the state to the county, then I would hope that we would look at taking away some of those unfunded mandates that we do have to provide funding for at the county level. From smaller ones to larger ones. Some of the smaller ones include, the fact that we pay for the state's Health and Human Services office space for some reason. That's just a mandate that the state makes us pay for. Okay, but it's their employees, but we pay for it. Okay, we pay for some of the staff that work for the state judges. Okay, we do that. Sometimes we support probation to subsidize some of their services, as we discussed. All things that are crucially important to make sure that they're functioning well. But again, we're taking on that through our local budget. So that's where it's going. And if there's going to be things that will limit our budget in the future, then hopefully the state can help us to address some of those unfunded mandates so that we can keep a balanced budget. So I'll stop there for now. I will go back to Commissioner Kavanaugh and then Commissioner Boyle and Friend.
Thank you. As Chairman Garcia points out, there are no real good choices here when you get down to it, but there are choices. And I guess one of my concerns is with how we consider what is now over a $500 million budget to make those choices in an informed fashion. I can't, based on the information before us, do that because by and large, most of this budget has been presented to us today without hearings, and I've always pointed to this as a process thing, and I've had discussions with my colleagues about this. There should be hearings on each and every one of these budget items. There are hearings in the Nebraska legislature on each and every agency and department in the state, regardless of their budget going up, staying the same, or going down. They have to come once a year and make a case. We used to do that. We don't do that anymore. I think it's difficult for us, much less the public, to grasp what's in this 600+ million grab bag based on this discussion today. And I no reflection on anybody. I think everybody's trying to do the best they can. I'm just saying it would be better practices if we re-engaged in a department by department, office by office, public discussion before the budget comes to us as it is today for approval. I don't think I can in good conscience say, I know what's in this budget comprehensively enough to say this is good, this is not, this is too much, this is too little, this is just right. I don't think anybody can, based on what we have done in terms of eliminating public hearings on these things, not just for the people who are going over, the people who are staying the same, and God bless them, some agencies have actually been able to cut their budgets over time. That said, there are a couple things in here that you bring forth, and a couple things that I'd like to see added. One would be to this document. Mm-hmm. We have a pretty good idea of the revenue sources, and I'll come back to that in a second, but it doesn't appear from this document that we have the same, here's what we're paying for the sheriff's office, here's what we're paying for the clerk's office, here's what we're paying for, emergency services. And just that laundry list, would be helpful. I know that it's in the
It's in the full deck, yeah, it's not
yeah.
in this
But,
smaller deck here.
just
but
kind of a
yes.
one-pager on that,
Okay.
executive summary on that.
All right.
Not only helpful for us, but I think
For the audience as
public.
well, yep.
If I gave this to, a constituent, and I said, okay, pull out what the treasurer's office costs, it would be difficult for them to do that. I'm just
Okay.
saying, I know
can
those
include
numbers
that
exist. I know
next
they're in
year.
our backup documents. It's a matter of making the public aware. And hearings do this as well. I mean, people can actually come, they can now Zoom in and get a real-time thing. But this has two, I think, glaring lessons. First of all, the criminal justice system is one of the drivers of budget increases. If we were looking at what could we do to maybe alleviate that or something, we have to look at the kids' jail, which is brand new, is empty, it's across the street, not being utilized. And I think that, in light of the proposal to build a huge multi-million-dollar basically hospital on the correction center, we might want to save people a lot of money by utilizing empty property that's brand new that we have a block away from where the proposal is for building that. The other thing is,
That's time.
oh, sorry.
Yep. Thank you. Commissioner Boyle?
Yeah, thanks a lot for this, Lori. It was very, I think, the right type of cursory review that we needed. I think more than anything, I just want to express my frustration with just the property tax system in general, just like most citizens too. I think what's important is when I look at this and being someone who now behind the scenes can see how it all works. Douglas County is basically the administrative manager of property tax collection. So when people pay their property taxes, it's not like Douglas County is getting all the money and keeping it. So if we really want to get to the heart of the matter and how do we decrease property taxes, the two biggest entities that take property tax money are the Omaha Public Schools at 55% and the City of Omaha at 21%. So the bottom line is we don't have any control of the levies that they set. They set them themselves, just like we set our own. So if you want to get at the biggest spender or utilizer of property tax money, it's really going after the schools and the city, which is unfortunate. I'm a big believer in public education. At the same time, I think that finding another funding mechanism for that would potentially be helpful. I know the governor has brought that up. But to get true property tax relief, it's figuring out another funding mechanism for the schools. Second would be to have the city use their other revenue generating sources, using them like sales tax as opposed to using property tax. So even though we're honing down on Douglas County's budget for all of this, I want to stress this is still one of the smallest portions of property tax money is spent in Douglas County on Douglas County services, which includes public safety, specifically the sheriff's office, the public defender, the county attorney, and the corrections center, as well as taking care of our youth in the youth center. So I just want to make that point. We're discussing 13% of the budget of the property taxes right now. So if we really want to get to the issues, I think it's really figuring out a way to help the public schools have another funding mechanism, and then see if the city of Omaha can deviate away from property taxes and use other sources. So it's just my 2 cents.
Thank you. We'll go to Commissioner Friend.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I will finish up, at least I think I will. Bullet point 6 was were the property tax funded services that we have in this state, or excuse me, in this county. 75 of those. Now, of course, we've just identified, we've known for quite a while that the state is going to go into a special session. The governor's called a special session. They're going to go in and analyze the property tax burden in the state, which does have to happen. But depending on what they do, that will dictate a lot of the steps that we have moving forward, because I already laid that out. The state has a significant portion of appropriation authority that we don't have, okay? The state wants to change, we want to change our process locally at the county level. Sure, I'm open to that. Do we need more finance committee hearings? Possibly, or meetings to talk about what this budget is going to look like and what type of problems are on the horizon? Yeah, probably, and I'm always open to that. Sure, enhancements can be made. Hearings for every one of these departments, I already laid out, and I'm not criticizing Commissioner Kavanaugh. It's a very unique idea, and it's very interesting. Problem is, almost everything that we do is mechanical. We were laughing about engineers earlier. Almost everything we do is like an engineer. We're crunching numbers based on the 13% that Commissioner Boyle had pointed out that we actually get. We're crunching numbers. The legislature doesn't do that. You know what they do? I was there. I saw it. We had a $600 million shortfall when Governor Johans was governor. They go into the appropriations. They start the appropriations process. You know what they do? There's all types of bantering back and forth, and there's all types of ways to try to figure out how to cut the budget. Because they have the statutory authority to do it, and so did the governor. The governor goes 10% across the board. You would have thought that you assassinated everybody at UNL. It was unbelievable. The lobby was freaking out. So here's what ended up happening. They go in and they find a new way to tax people. They go out and they go get the legislature, in its infinite wisdom, goes out and finds a service that's not being taxed. And they gobble up the 500 million or the 600 million. We don't have that. If I have that capability, somebody tap me on the shoulder and tell me that I have that capability, that I can go out and find a new source of taxation, and I can say, you know what, the people that we represent in Douglas County, we as commissioners are now going to tax you for this. Show me the statute that gives me that authority. So for goodness sake, why are we going to have appropriations hearings that say, oh, by the way, sheriff, and by the way, a public defender, and by the way, clerk of the court, and by the way, all you people, you're not getting this money. Really? And they're going to turn around and say, no, we are, because the legislature says we get it. It's superfluous. I wouldn't say it's a waste of time. We can change our processes. But if we have hearings on every one of these, you know what I do? I sit there and go, Boy, I wish I had some authority. I don't. Thank you for your input. Look, can we cut 15 seconds? Can we cut non-mandated services? You bet. Do we need to do analysis and make sure that we do it in the right way and inform people that they're going to be losing their jobs? I think we do. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Friend. Commissioner Kavanaugh, third round, 2-minute round.
Just to what my colleague, Commissioner Friend brought up, why have these hearings? And, you know, we might realize some cuts. The big real reason is tell the public what we're spending their money on. Tell people, make it public. And, you know, if there is no cut, okay, but at least people are going to have the opportunity to know we're spending millions and millions of dollars on this thing. What do you think? That's the big thing that we're missing right now, and it's missing on this board too. Tell us what you're spending the money on. If we do nothing, at least we'll be informed. As to, and I have to agree with Commissioner Friend on this, the idea of changing property tax levels, you have to create alternative revenue streams. Absolutely. We run a great risk of losing a big revenue stream here on inheritance tax, which I think is this year over $20 million.
Yeah, 22 million.
In the special session of the legislature. I have advocated before, create a new revenue stream. Legalize marijuana, for instance, and do what all of our surrounding states are doing, realizing hundreds of millions of dollars of new revenue that many people don't have to pay. If you want to find a tax that you like, find one that you don't have to pay. But, you know, that's a different discussion, and it's for the legislature to do, not for us. Hopefully, when that day comes, and it will, the counties will be cut in on that revenue stream, and we can do something realistic about property taxes. The idea here is we don't have a process that informs us or the public, and as a result of that, I'm not going to be able to vote for this budget just based on the fact that I don't have enough information. It's, again, this is the one and only time that apparently we're going to have this discussion. We're missing one of our members here today, and so, you know, my inclination would be to put this off for further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Friend, third round, 2-minute round.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was laughing with Commissioner Kavanaugh earlier. I do enjoy this dialogue back and forth because here's the thing. He's not woefully mistaken, but he's a little bit mistaken. He's not way off the reservation, but he's a little bit, there's a little bit of misinformation, if you will. Do you know that you can go out and look at this budget every week? I've been prepared for this for an awful long time. I knew what this was going to look like. We're informing the public right now. I just took 5 minutes to go through 6 different areas of the way we are positioned to do our mechanical work. Not our esoteric, ideological work, our mechanical work. And again, remember, we've just spent 25 minutes going through this, and I think it's healthy. Do we have to do more? I would agree with Commissioner Kavanaugh in this regard. Yeah, we probably do, and I'd be very open to actually giving some of this information in more diverse public forums that are going to be more educational. But at the end of the whole discussion, this isn't a prediction. This is a fact. Here's what I'll learn. Okay, I can fund this. I can't fund this. And now we're going to have to make some decisions. It just so happens that now those decisions in regard to what I can't fund, what we can't fund, are very limited. And the legislature and the governor are about to limit them even more. What I want to see is what they do. And then I'm going to know what type of mechanical approach that we as commissioners have to take. We can just start making all kinds of budget decisions and cut 4 departments today. I know what they are. I'm not going to name them. I can make a motion. I can make a motion on one of any four of those departments to cut. We could probably save anywhere from $10 million to $12 million with those four departments. I think it's, to Commissioner Kavanaugh's point, a little unfair if I come out there and make a motion and somebody seconds it right now and we cut four departments. Didn't have any hearings. We didn't go into the Finance Committee and do it. There needs to be some light shown on that as time goes on. To Commissioner Garcia's point, Chair Garcia, we're kind of willing to do it, but some analysis needs to be applied.
10 seconds.
50, oh.
Yeah, it's kind of been bouncing around.
How much time do I have?
10 seconds.
All right, that's enough. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Friend. Commissioner Morgan.
Okay, when you talk about property taxes, and Mike Boyle and I started on this probably 3 or 4 years ago, trying to get a cap on what property taxes could be raised. Many, many states have that. And there was a bill introduced, and I think and wish the governor and the legislature had moved it forward, where you could only raise property values 5% a year on residential homes, period. And that is in effect in many states. It takes a vote of the people, and I think 70% of the people would vote for it. And I can give you addresses of homes at 63rd and Poppleton or Hamilton Street that I was down here yesterday for a citizen, and the property taxes from what he bought it for 2 years ago went up 100%. And he bought it just 2 years ago. I can name others that are 50%. If you had that 5% increase period, I think the citizens would be very, very satisfied. What else the legislature and the governor may do is great too, to look at how they can fund the schools in another way. So that's one thing. The second thing I want to say is I hope that gets some attention for the future, and also the governor's proposal can get the 33 votes, which I think is a challenge, but hopefully might get there. I want to thank Lori Persh. This is her first budget. She's worked diligently on it, and I'm not just saying that to be nice. I'd rather say it behind her back and have said it behind her back. She does an excellent job of really working at this. And of course, we're fortunate with the Sheriff's Department being fully staffed, where the Omaha Police, I think, are down about 110 or 20 officers right now from what I've heard at a Sheriff Merit Commission last week that I attended at the Sheriff's Office. So I think we are doing a good job, and I know we face some other challenges in recent times with our correction facility. And I think Mike Meyer and Amber is still here. When we were down 65 correction officers at one time, or a few more than that, and we're now fully staffed, I believe, as I've seen in recent weeks. And that's a safety issue, not only for our people that are incarcerated, but also for our officers that work at that facility and do a very respectful, really challenging job. And I appreciate them greatly, the team that works there. So with that, I just again say thank you to Lori Persh for the job that she's done, and I know she works hard to answer citizen comments and communicate. And I see Doug Kagan with the Nebraska taxpayers fortunately shaking his head yes. And I thank you for your diligent work that you do in watching what we're doing. And we had a number of meetings out at Whole Foods with our finance director and Roger, well, and Mike Friend especially. So I thank you for those meetings also.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Morgan. Before we jump to citizen comments, can I get that official motion and second for the budget as presented for 24-25?
We need
I'd
to,
so move.
Oh, sorry. So we usually
Yeah,
close it
close
first?
the public.
Okay, very good. In that case, we'll take the citizen comments. And then we'll close the public hearing. Yes, please.
I want to pass these out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think that's enough. 6. Thanks, Dan. Good morning, Doug Kagan, 416 South 130th Street, representing Nebraska Taxpayers for Freedom. First, we appreciate the Chief Financial Officer making a PowerPoint presentation available to taxpayers. We view the overall budget positively, particularly it's not raising the tax levy. With property valuations skyrocketing in Douglas County, taxpayers probably would appreciate it more if the board would lower the tax rate. The fact that this total budget sets over 12% above the previous fiscal year budget and factoring in inflation, we would like to see this board set strategic targets for comprehensive budget cutting. Also understand that federal pandemic funds only temporarily will help you balance the budget. Moreover, inheritance tax funds are continually threatened with elimination. You have managed to balance the fiscal year 2025 budget. However, we urge commissioners to not annually scramble for cuts to balance the budget, but to initiate a comprehensive strategic plan to eliminate unneeded services and personnel. I'm not going to talk about every one of these bullet points, but I just want to refer to a few that we suggest. Eliminate non-mandated services. Use zero-based budgeting in the departments that you can. Determine which services are requiring added appropriations, like in criminal justice, and which services are utilizing lesser appropriations. Then transfer funds from the latter, unencumbered monies, to the former. Determine what categories of expenses are likely to increase in future years, like county corrections, judicial, etc. Determine which categories of expenses may decrease during future years. Estimate what revenue sources will increase in future years, like grants, hopefully, and which revenue sources may decrease, like the inheritance tax. Consider what services the state in future might fund or partially fund. Next, consider what non-mandated services the county can either trim or eliminate. Only then will county taxpayers truly have confidence in the fiscal responsibility of this county board. Finally, we suggest that during the department budget hearings, each department present a similar template showing the same information in similar form, such as personnel numbers, increased or decreased expenditures, specific activity costs, etc., and ask the departments to put them online. We looked at the Sheriff's Department online. They put their slideshow online. It was very detailed and very informative, and we would encourage all the departments to do this. I know it's an added responsibility to have individual budget hearings, but I think that's the only way you can really have a way for individual taxpaying citizens to see what every department is doing, like Commissioner Kavanaugh suggested. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me jump back to Commissioner Borgeson first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Commissioner Kavanaugh will probably fall out of his chair, but I do agree with what he was saying this year about this budget, because this is the first time we've not really gathered as a board to talk about the budget and where we could potentially cut. It was just, this is what everybody said, and this is what we're going to do. And I, for one, and Chief Deputy Wren is here, and he can correct me from whatever I say if it's wrong, but when it comes to looking at each individual budget that went over our target, there is probably over $600,000 or more in that budget of the sheriff's that could be eliminated. There's a lot of duplication that's going on with services. It has nothing to do with public safety. That is our number one. We get it. We got it. I think we're doing a great job about it. But there's duplication going on in jurisdictions that we've never done services in before, and it's costing us. And actually, the other jurisdictions are paying for it as well. Or the citizens are paying for it. We had some conversation about a $368,000 or $86,000 armored vehicle, which could easily be eliminated, unnecessary, not needed. We have mobile crisis teams that I brought up before for behavioral health. We don't need to develop a whole new department like the city of Omaha did when we have mobile crisis teams available to respond for behavioral health issues. And I'm hoping that as we work towards, or in the future here, that we actually do have a non-law enforcement response to behavioral health issues for the majority of these cases, which I think is better. When Commissioner Friend talks about mandated versus non-mandated, I agree, but I disagree because some of those non-mandated services actually save us money. So if we didn't have the community corrections programs that we have, those individuals would most likely be in our jail. And that's at a much higher cost than what we have with these community corrections programs. But we have to have those discussions as a board. So bring in all of the budget of the corrections and let's start going through one by one. Medical, we knew ahead of time that was going to increase. Nothing we can do about it. We're mandated to provide that service. I was here when we did it in-house. Not a good idea. Not a good idea. Is there different ways that we could potentially kind of bifurcate some of those? Maybe. That would be a good conversation. When we talk about encumbered funds, we have to stop this. We have to stop encumbering funds. This is a way for people to kind of future earmark funds that we may or may not have. And we don't even know completely. We don't get a report during budget time. We don't get a report on a quarterly basis of these encumbered funds that had been encumbered back in 22 or 21. So you get 3 years, are they being spent on what they said they were being spent on? Are they spent? Did they go away? Did somebody spend it where they weren't supposed to spend it?
That's time for your first round, Commissioner Borgeson,
I'll let
in case you want
another-
another.
If another citizen wants to.
Very good.
I'll take a break.
Can I
Sounds good.
respond? Do I have time to respond or no? Nope.
Let's loop
No,
back
that's all
around
right,
to you as well, Lori, and let Larry come on up.
Larry Storr, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha 68132. Number of areas that I would talk specifically about, but I'm going to be general. I want to start off with the area of money spent on .com. There's been a number of times I've went and reviewed the tapes of various meetings and found that certain things were missing on the tape that were said during the meetings. Maybe because of editing, maybe because of a 20-second delay. It's not clear who .com is, because when you go on the website to look at videos, it looks like there's 3 different options for you to see the videos, but you're not real sure whether it's .com, the county, or whether it's YouTube. And I'm not sure I trust YouTube, but I do remember from October 3rd that there are items that I said that were not on the tape. And if you look a week or 2 after that, parts of that meeting from the Board of Commissioners, were on other weeks also. So you're maybe spending money for .com that's wasted. And then there was the speaker system that now you finally have the speaker system fixed. Thank you. The money you spent going to national associations, meetings, travel, the dues you spend, that could be eliminated. We want you to listen to us, not them. Okay? You're supposed to do what we tell you to do, not what they tell you to do. Time's running out, so I'll end with this. Elections. I have numerous emails to you guys asking for we the people to be put on a presentation where we're presenting and you guys are the opponents. Don't even get an answer to those emails. Well, last night I spent about the fourth time listening to a presentation by a national expert who had other national experts with him on the stolen election. And guess what? We find out again that Nebraska followed the same pattern of voting fraud that most other states did. And a lot of that is inflated voter rolls that all of a sudden people died or left town and the voter roll go down again.
Can you tie it back to the budget, please, Larry?
Yeah.
Thank
Okay.
you.
I'm just saying, I'm going to give you guys this so you can refresh your memory about the separation of powers and who you belong to. You belong to us, not national associations. You don't realize how serious the situation is because you don't listen to the citizens. In fact, you shut us up by removing citizen comments. Unconstitutional, ladies and gentlemen, and you need to honor your oaths of office or step down. People aren't going to take it anymore.
Thank you, Larry. Other citizen comments?
And then I'll come back.
Alan Seibert, 5537 North 140th Street, Omaha, Nebraska. This is a proposed budget. It can't be emphasized enough that it's proposed. I realize the questions I'm about to ask may not be answered now, but I think they should be kept in mind. Last year at this time, property tax revenue was estimated to be 9% higher than the previous year. It was later increased to 12%. That's a significant increase, about $1.8 million. So my questions, was the cause of that variance identified? What chance is there this year for another variance? The increase from 9 to 12% last year seemed to be a factor in this board's decision to lower the county levy. What chance is there for another levy reduction after updated numbers? Again, please keep those questions in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Borgeson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In a couple of other items, I noticed on Doug Kagan's sheet, he talked about getting rid of our public information officer, where, again, another duplication is almost $100,000 in the sheriff's budget for a civilian executive communication specialist that, again, is not needed. Would be, great to have, but not needed. When Commissioner Morgan was talking about caps, yeah, there was a 3% cap talked about by the state last legislative session. I can guarantee you now there's a 0% cap being talked about, which is even worse for county. And with this special session coming up, we don't know what's going to come out of that. But what I fear is that our partnership that I thought had with the governor and folks to talk about what that does to counties and cities, it will be very detrimental to us. And so back to having these conversations about our budgets, I think need to come a little bit more frequently, other than just at our budget time. And that's going to become even more important depending on what the state does to us. And I don't think there's one commissioner up here that's going to say that, you know, if we took deep dives into something that we could come up with cuts, because we probably, and I know we could. But again, it can't just be solely based on the non-mandated, mandated, because there are some of those non-mandated services that actually save us money. If we didn't have them, again, it would cost us more. And so those are the conversations we have to have. Maybe there's a different way of providing them. I don't know. We've never had those conversations, but I think strategically, I think we should start having much more frequent conversations about that. And again, I know it kind of sounded like I'm picking on the sheriff, but that was the largest besides corrections, and we already talked about that with the medical. But, you know, there's nice things to have. There's great, you know, multiple task forces to create and have out there in the community. But if our number one priority is public safety, patrolling the unincorporated areas of Douglas County, responding to the crime and calls in those areas, then that's what we should be doing. We have increased just in a year or two from 131 or 143 in 2023 to 156 in 2025. That's 13 more deputies, and they're actually hiring them at a lateral now where somebody comes over at where they're leaving their current position, which is costing us more, and there's another almost $64,000 in this year's budget to make up that difference for lateral versus entry-level hires. So we're hiring at a much higher level than we were if we're hiring entry level. But again, we need to have conversations about that. And so I too think that, especially with this budget and with what we know is coming down from the state, when it not only just inheritance tax, we should be having a plan in place for when that goes away, whether it be a tiered down effect or a one wipe it all out next year. We should have a plan on how we're going to address this fiscally in Douglas County. So I'll leave it there for now.
That's time. Thank you. I'll take a quick round. In a second here, Lori, I'll let you finish your thoughts that you wanted to finish. Before that, I'll mention, as far as Mr. Seibert, is that the name? You mentioned the potential for lowering the lid this year like we did last year. Last year, I was a co-sponsored for lowering the lid, and we did approve that. And we mentioned that we would continue to look at our budget, the assessments, budget, et cetera, to see if we could lower it again. I think that's something that we would entertain if the state was not strongly threatening to severely harm our budget revenue moving forward, starting with the special session in July this month. And so if they're going to do that, then we're really going to be in a bind and might have to start looking at the cuts being discussed. If they weren't doing that, then by all means, I think we would be talking about a levy decrease again this year, just like last year. But we will wait and see what will happen with that special session, which is coming up shortly. Nonetheless, I do agree we need to do planning for options B, C, and D if the stuff hits the fan, so to speak. We need to look at, I've mentioned to a few commissioners and to our staff that I would like to see a list of potential services that support different things at the state level that we have been funding in the past that maybe could be looked at, not because we want to start cutting these things, but we might have to start cutting things. We fund the state extension office in Douglas County, right? A lot of people like the extension office. Well, if we're going to face challenges in the future, those are the kind of things we're trying to start looking at. Some people like the law library. I know Commissioner Kavanaugh really supports the law library, but some people will start saying, do we need to have a law library? We're going to have to start facing a lot of tough things if the ledge does what it's threatening to do. And that also includes, last meeting we supported the JDI position, which supports probation services and supports the juvenile justice kind of stakeholders coming together, et cetera. That's something that definitely would be looked at if we have to start fixing cuts for future years. As far as non-mandated services, yeah, by all means, we have to look at everything. I agree with Commissioner Borgeson. We have to look at everything, but also with some brain power behind it, some strategy behind it. Which one of those non-mandated services saves us money long term? Which ones are potentially on the chopping block that we are willing to chop right away? Which ones do we want to hold off on? Which ones do we partially chop? There's so many things to look at if we have to go in that direction. I'm hoping that we don't. I'm hoping that the state looks at the main cause for high property taxes, funding the schools, 55% more or less of your tax bill. If they can address that, then the tax bill will definitely decrease. What's ironic is that if they put local caps on local government, it's actually not going to decrease your property tax bill. They're going to cap it moving forward, and the property tax itself stays relatively where it's at with moderate increases moving forward. You're not going to actually see a substantial decrease. So they're actually not addressing the problem. If they tackle the school board fund or the school's funding, which the governor has mentioned, then they would actually tackle the main core problem and actually reduce your property tax bill, which would be great if they could tackle that somehow. So we'll see what happens there. I'm not eager to start cutting a lot of our departments that do amazing services for our citizens, but by all means, we do need a backup plan, as Commissioner Borgeson mentioned. I'll stop myself there. Further citizen comments, if any? Oh, sorry, Commissioner Borgeson. We will jump to a third 2-minute round for you.
It won't even thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to comment on the National Association program that I brought to this county that has brought in, and this is the latest, or the past of March 2024, I'm waiting for an update, but since August of 2020, it has brought in $9 million to this county. And we wouldn't have had that if that program wasn't brought here through the National Association. So the bashing of the National is not that we're not listening. We're listening, and we're bringing good things to this county that's helping offset our services with revenue that we wouldn't have had otherwise. It's not included in this budget again this year as far as a item to talk about. But once I get the updated number of what we now have currently brought in as revenue from that program, I'll bring it to the board as an update, because that's something we should be getting kudos for, which we're not. One, maybe people don't know about it, but two, it's been presented and it's been talked about, but instead of spending, we're actually bringing in money just because of how we're dealing with our liquidity and our dollars. And that's a good thing. That is a good thing, because it's helping with offset those property taxes, because again, we have no other revenue source to, as Ms. Purse talked about in the beginning, of a three-legged stool. We have one leg of that stool. And so, again, I get kind of frustrated that we have a good thing, an excellent program that's brought in millions of dollars to this county. And I think that's something to shout about and give kudos to everybody involved in making sure that we continue that program and bring in more. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. You already had a round, Larry, I'm sorry. Other citizen comments? You already had a round. Sorry, Larry. Yep. Sorry, Larry. You already had a round. I appreciate it. All right. Other citizen comments at this moment for the public hearing before we close the public hearing on the 24-25 budget? Or from commissioners that have remaining rounds? All right. If not, we will close the public hearing on the budget for FY 24-25. With the closing of the hearing, we can now get a motion and a second for the budget as presented.
And so moved to approve the budget as presented.
Motion by Morgan, second by Boyle. And we can vote.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
do we want this to include adjournment from the budget meeting?
Oh, it sure could.
Yes.
Commissioner Gallo, did you have a comment on the motion?
Because I'm going to abstain, I just wanted to make a record that I'm abstaining based on the comments that I made earlier regarding the need for a more robust budget process. I think we've all addressed this more or less, and hopefully we will see this in the future. But based on the information that we have in front of us today, I don't think it's appropriate or best practices to go ahead and approve this $500 million plus budget based on a 55-minute discussion and a one-day public input. So I'm abstaining on this vote.
Thank you. Commissioner Borgeson?
Just for the record, I'm not abstaining, I'm voting no on the budget because I do believe that there should have been much more conversation and looking at where we could potentially make some cuts, again, preparing for what we know the state's going to be doing to us here in the near future.
Thank you. Commissioner Friend?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And with all due respect, the commissioners make valid points. I'm voting yes on this budget for the reasons that I laid out for the opportunities that I had, the 8+ minutes. The mechanical versus the ideological. I know that Doug and the Nebraska Taxpayers for Freedom, I know other organizations around the state who do really good work in this regard. Doug does great work. He's been doing it for years. I also know how this mechanically works. And I'm not going to vote against a budget that I know mechanically works right now. Will I vote for decreases when we do the appropriate analysis? Will I vote for cuts? To Chair Garcia's point, yeah, probably. When we have the opportunity and we can take those mechanical pieces and go, look, here's where we're at. And by the way, here's what we're going to do. Good. Commissioner Kavanaugh made a great point. Maybe we haven't vetted that stuff enough. But my point again is this, and I'll end with this. We can vet it until the cows come home. But when these mandated services, and elected officials particularly, come in, walk in and say, I need this. You, commissioners, don't have any choice. You better rubber stamp it. None of us like that idea, but we do. You know why? Because there's historical data here. If an elected official walked in here to this podium and said, no, you will give me that amount of money, you know what we do if we say no? Next thing you know, we got a lawsuit on our hands. Because they're going to say, no, we need this to operate. Or even worse, from a political and ideological standpoint, somebody's taking a bully pulpit out there and saying that we're jeopardizing public safety. I don't know a commissioner on this board that's ever done that, not since I've been here. We don't jeopardize public safety. We don't jeopardize roads production. We don't jeopardize emergency management services. We won't jeopardize 911. We won't jeopardize these things. I'm voting yes for this budget because I think it's rational. And I also think, albeit we should probably have a little more vetting. Great, I'm open to that. Let's do that. But we're going to vote no on a budget. You know, look, we could have two commissioners say no, this budget's going to pass. It's easy for them to go out. They're not going to do this, but it's easy to go out to KETV after that and say, I voted against an irrational budget. This is not an irrational budget. I laid out some of the mechanisms to the mechanical budget that we have here and the choices that we have available to us and the choices that we don't. I respect greatly these commissioners' decision-making here. I'm saying I hope that they would respect that I'm going to say, let's keep county government going in an appropriate fashion, and let's enhance the process as we move forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Very briefly on my end, I do plan to vote yes with a strong cautionary tale to all our departments, especially with the upcoming special session. In past years, in recent years, we've been able to cover overages. We've been able to cover expansions in needed personnel with law enforcement, criminal justice, public safety, with needed software upgrades for public defender's office and related offices that they needed to upgrade after 2-3 decades of working on antiquated old software. But I really hope that all of our county officers, defender, attorney, sheriffs, etc., will be with us in helping to educate our legislators, our governor's office, in how our local budget addresses those needs in criminal justice, law enforcement, public safety, and how any potential changes or caps will affect those very issues and services. So we'll see what the future brings us, but hopefully we can educate together our state partners. With that being said, Commissioner Borgeson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, it has nothing to do with me being against anything. It's being against not having further conversations or individual departments or offices. It's not having that conversation since we had presentations of departments that have gone over. That's it. That's all we had. And no other conversation about what we could do or not do or should do or maybe do. So that is what my issue is. This is, again, to Commissioner Friend's point, a 55-minute conversation, or whoever said it, 55-minute conversation about a multi-million-dollar budget that, again, we are going to be in a world of hurt depending on what happens during the special session and also next year with the legislative session. So I think we just need to be more prepared. That's all.
Thank you, Commissioner Borgeson. And just to finish my thought and cautionary tale, if we are capped at a hypothetical 3%, let's say, there's been mentions of 0%, 3%, maybe a 6% exception for criminal justice. There's all kinds of things being tossed out there, but in a hypothetical, just for the sake of grabbing a number that we're capped at 3%, in future years, I would not be open to voting yes on overages at 6%, 7%, anything above 3%, essentially, because we have to stay in budget. We have to have a balanced budget. We can't have a negatively balanced budget, so to speak. So I just wanted to cap off my cautionary tale. Yes, I'm going to support some of the increases in overages this year because those departments are important in many different ways. But let's see what happens, because if we're capped, then don't expect these kinds of overages supports in the future just for the sake of keeping a balanced budget in the future if we are capped. Hopefully we're not. Hopefully that they address the school board issue and actually lower our property taxes by addressing the school funding, but we'll see what happens. Anything else before we vote? If not, let's vote.
Motion passes. Commissioner Cavan abstaining, Commissioner Borgeson voting no, all other commissioners voting yes.
Thank you. And that included adjournment of the budget hearing and meeting, which means we can move to reconvene Board of Commissioners meeting. Do I have a motion second? So moved. Motion by Morgan, second by Friend. Please vote.
Motion passes 6-0.
This reconvenes our Board of Commissioners meeting. We do have a need for executive session for reasons of contract negotiation, litigation, and personnel and legal advice. Do I have a motion and second to go into executive session? So moved. Motion by Morgan, second by Friend. Please vote. Oh, what was the correction?
What items were we going
Oh, I said contract negotiation, litigation, personnel and legal advice. Okay. You're good.
Motion passes 6-0.
The board will now go into executive session for reasons of contract negotiation, litigation, and personnel and legal advice.
Motion to reconvene and adjourn by Commissioner Borgeson, second by Commissioner Boyle. Motion passes 5-0. Commissioner Kavanaugh is absent. We are adjourned at 12:08 p.m.